This is the Mad Genius Hall of Fame, and that is one big Twinkie. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome to the Underground Laboratory, where from time to time we pay tribute to the mad scientists, supervillains, and evil geniuses that help inspire us and help shape our world. So this was a hard one today because we are going to do a Ghostbuster, and of the 4 original Ghostbusters, 3 of them were scientists. So which one do we pick? Now, I gave it some thought, and we might get around to some other ones, but really to start off with, who is really the inventor? Who is the one coming up with some crazy contraptions and things like that? For that, we got to go with Egon Spengler. So he is going to be our inductee this week into the Mad Genius Hall of Fame. All we got to do now is commission his portrait so he can put him on the wall. So let's get to it. I grew up in the 1980s, and Ghostbusters was a legit phenomenon. I mean, it was everywhere. You couldn't turn on the radio without hearing the Ray Parker Jr. theme song. And you know, it's so cool to me that it's gone on and it's become so ingrained in popular culture, you know, to this day. Today there are more pop culture references in the forms of, you know, fan art. There's just so much. Just go on the internet. There's so much cool fan art, and of course I'm adding my little bit of that right now. But also, you know, cosplayers. There's like groups of Ghostbuster like organizations that you know dress up as Ghostbusters and go out and you know, they raise money for charity and everything, and you know, you see the Ecto 1 cars and everything. It's really cool. And then all the collectibles that are out there, from everything from pop vinyl to, you know, retro style action figures to different versions, whether it's from the films or the cartoons or whatever. I mean, there's just so much stuff out there with Ghostbusters everywhere you turn, and of course movie reboots and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like super excited, just you know, and like happy to know that this franchise has you know grown and will sort of be around for, you know, future generations to enjoy. So today we're going to talk about one particular character from Ghostbusters, and so yeah, we had a little trouble, you know, trying to pick, but I think we came up with a good one. I think the only way to start this off is not only because it's just a great character, but also pay tribute to the person who created the character and who starred as the character, and that character is Egon Spengler, and we're going to talk a little bit about him, the character, a little bit about the background behind the character, and we're going to talk some about the actual drawing that we're working on today. So as far as the drawing goes, I am using Kona Classic Artist Paper. It has a nice sort of tan finish to it, which I really like. It really helps kind of pop the colors and everything. It gives it sort of a unique feel. So for certain things like this, and for all of the, you know, all of the portraits that we're doing for the Mad Genius Hall of Fame, I'm going to be using this Kona Artist Paper. And the cool thing about this paper, interesting thing about this paper, is that it's made from recycled coffee bean bag fibers. So, you know, it's sort of environmentally friendly. It's recycled and everything. So yeah, it's a nice paper. So if you're an artist and you haven't tried it out, maybe give it a whirl. The pencils that I'm using are Prismacolor Cola Erase pencils. I'm using red in this case, but I've used a number of different colors. It just depends, but the red seems to work well. It kind of blends in with the paper, and it pops out enough so I can see the difference between the paper and everything. But the thing I really like about all the Prismacolor Cola Erase pencils is they've got a waxy finish to them, so they don't really smudge like normal paper and everything. So anyway, those are, you know, those are some of the tools that I'm using, and I'll get more into some of the other tools once we get further along in the illustration. But right now what I'm doing is I'm sort of laying down the basic, you know, well, I've already laid down the general gesture drawing and everything, and now I'm kind of filling in, you know, some details and things like that. But I wanted to, you know, there are different versions of the characters. There's the animated version, of course, the real life version, but I'm sort of going a little bit in between. I want it to look like the, you know, look like the real the character from the film, but I also want to caricaturize that bit and kind of add my own style to it. So that's kind of the way I'm approaching this particular drawing. So let's talk about the character. So Dr. Egon Spengler is a parapsychologist and Ghostbuster, and he has been featured in the films Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, as well as a few animated series. There's the Real Ghostbusters and later the Extreme Ghostbusters, and I believe Egon is the only character that appeared in that second animated series. I think it was like a new team of Ghostbusters and everything. I haven't seen it, but I hear tell. Anyway, so he makes also a number of appearances in video games and comics, and like I said before, there's just tons of toys and collectibles and all that good stuff. So Egon in the film was portrayed by the late actor, writer, director, comedian Harold Ramis, and Ramis was born in 1967, and sadly he passed away a few years ago in 2014. And he's probably best known for his role in Ghostbusters, playing Egon Spengler, but he's appeared in a number of other films that you've probably heard of, films like Stripes, As Good as It Gets, High Fidelity, and Knocked Up. So although Ramis is very recognizable for a lot of his film and television roles, where I think he really shined was behind the camera as a writer and director. So if you didn't know, he actually wrote the screenplay to Ghostbusters and created the character of Egon Spengler, of course all the characters in Ghostbusters. As a writer, Ramis wrote screenplays for a number of beloved comedies, including Animal House, Meatballs, Caddyshack, Stripes, of course Ghostbusters, Back to School, Groundhog Day, and Analyze This. And a lot of those films he actually directed. So like Caddyshack, Groundhog Day, some of the more popular ones. He directed a lot of films, but probably not as many as he wrote. But he also directed one of my favorite movies of all time, National Lampoon's Vacation. I wish there was a character from there. There was a mad scientist I could do, but there's not. But anyway, so a little bit about the character. So Ramis named the character after Oswald Spengler, one of his high school classmates, and Egon Donjbach. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right, but he was a Hungarian refugee. But originally, Ramis hadn't really considered himself in the role. Some of the other actors that were considered were Christopher Walken, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd, and Jeff Goldblum. And I mean, those are some great like character actors. And you know, thinking about it, it would have been kind of interesting to think about how they would have approached those roles, because they've all got little quirks and things, and I think any one of them would have done something interesting with those roles. But I think all those actors have sort of played kind of mad scientist types before, so even though they didn't, we kind of, in some of their other roles, I think we get a chance to just imagine what they might have done. But you know, in the end, I'm kind of happy that Harold Ramis decided. I guess he just kind of, you know, sort of had an attachment to the character, and then in the end he decided to portray him himself, and I'm glad that he did, because I think he added something different, because it's a different character than you've seen him portray in other movies, whereas some of the other characters, like I said, they've played sort of that part before. Anyway, but I think now what I want to do is I want to turn attention back to the drawing. So now we're kind of at the coloring stage, And to do that, I use markers, and I do this a little different than I do most of the color work that I do. A lot of times I will pencil and ink the drawing first, and then I will go in and I'll start adding some of the markers. With this one, I'm leaving that inking stage till later, and so what I'm doing is right now I'm just going in and filling in some colors with a few markers that I have, and I use a number of different marker sets. They're all alcohol-based markers, and some of the Copics or Copics, however you want to pronounce that. That's probably my favorite of the markers that I use. But I also use Spectrum Noir and Pantone Tria markers, and yeah, I'll just use whatever. I just got a collection of markers, and I'll just grab whatever one tends to work for what I'm doing. So you can kind of see the drawing start to take shape as I sort of add a few layers with different colors. And again, the color scheme here is pretty monotone. I mean, we've got the gray background and or the tannish background, and most of the actual character is browns and grays and things like that. So, and a few blacks. So we're gonna keep it pretty monochromatic for this one. But we can kind of see as we start to lay down some of these colors and everything. And then once we get closer to the end and everything, then I'll go over it with ink, and then I'll pop everything out with like a kind of a white highlight. Now, although Harold Ramis created the character of Egon Spengler and also starred as him in the films, he wasn't the only actor to portray the character. In the animated series, Spengler was portrayed by veteran voice actor Maurice LaMarche, who is probably most well known for voicing the Brain from Pinky and the Brain. And now that I think about it, I think the Brain, or maybe even both Pinky and the Brain, could be definite considerations to induct in the Mad Genius Hall of Fame. So we'll have to put them on the list. But also, Maurice LaMarche also voiced voices in several popular animated shows, like the list goes on and on, but I will list a few of my favorites. So Inspector Gadget, Dennis the Menace, Popeye and Son, Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures, G.I. Joe, The Little Mermaid, Batman the Animated Series, Hey Arnold, The Critic, The Tick, Futurama, and The Simpsons. In his audition for the real Ghostbusters, LaMarche was asked not to portray Egon the way Ramis did, but maybe to do something else. But LaMarche's strong point was his impersonations. So, as an impressionist, he did a couple impersonations, and one of those was sort of a Woody Allen impression, and the other one was to basically do Harold Ramis, contrary to what they had told him. And I guess they liked that because that's sort of the direction they went for the show. And I'm happy they went with that direction. Now, although the voice of the character of Egon in the real Ghostbusters animated series is similar to Ramis, the look of the character is quite different. So for the way they designed the character for the animated series was a bit different, and I think it's because of some legal issues acquiring the likenesses for some of the characters from the film or the actors. And I also have a suspicion that it might have had something to do with the toy line, because if you have like three characters that are sort of similar as far as build and same hair color and everything, you probably want to differentiate those a little bit so the toys look a little bit different. So I think some of the characters like Ray Stantz, I think they made him a lot more chubby than maybe he was in the show and everything, in the movie rather. But I think Egon got the biggest makeover because he looks quite a bit different. They gave him like blonde hair in sort of a pompadour style, and a ponytail, but they did keep the signature spectacles, which is cool. So yeah, he's quite a bit different than that you see him as sort of I'm portraying him here. But I can kind of see the reason why. And a lot of people, they definitely gravitate to that look. You'll see also a lot of fan art of the character of Egon portrayed from the animated series, because it was a really popular series. So we've kind of got some two good looks to kind of choose from when doing our own fan art. So speaking of our own fan art, here you can see I am going in with the inks. And what I use right here, I am using a Cotman watercolor brush. I believe it's an 0 or a 0. And I'm using Deleter Black number 5. It's a manga ink. And when in some cases where I'm doing the inks first and I'm laying the markers over, the thing I like about most manga ink, particularly the Deleter 5, is that it doesn't bleed when you put the markers over it. So, and that's not always the case with most. I find that a lot of like American inks, they tend to bleed a little bit. So that's why I use that. And I'm going to I will put a link to all the supplies I use in the description. So if you guys are artists and you're interested in trying out some of these tools, you can do so. So yeah, we're just kind of gonna finish him up a little bit here, and then in the end, like I said, I'm gonna use another tool, which is it's called a Sino gel pen, and it's a white pen, and you'll see I'll kind of go through and outline them in that, and that's gonna, because it is sort of, it is sort of this monotone tan on tan paper, that's going to help it pop out quite a bit and give it kind of a nice feel. And I will be doing that even with the other characters that I'm doing throughout this series who may not have this kind of color scheme. But back to the character of Egon Spengler. What's he all about? What are some of his character traits? Now, of course, all the Ghostbusters are smart, but I think it's safe to say that Egon would be considered sort of the brains of the operation. I mean, he does wear the glasses, so you know how that goes. It's always the smart guy always wears the glasses, right? Egon is book smart, but he's a bit awkward and a little socially inept. And the character is played very serious and stiff, and as a result, most of the humor that comes from the character is very dry and deadpan. So a little bit about Egon's hobbies. Like a lot of us, he's a bit of a collector. So what does Egon collect? Well, he collects spores, molds, and funguses, mostly. So what makes Egon a mad scientist? Why is he in the list? Why have we included him in the Mad Genius Hall of Fame? Well, he is the member of the team most responsible for developing the foundation and the theories behind their paranormal and quantum studies. He is also the brains behind most of their technology. These are some of the inventions that he invented for the Ghostbusters. The PKE meters, the proton packs, the containment traps, the storage chamber, and yeah, so pretty much almost all the technology, he kind of spearheaded that technology and the invention of those things. And the other thing that I think is what comes to mind as far as making him sort of a mad genius and doing some crazy experiments. He's been known to do some experiments on himself. Most notably, he once tried to drill a hole through his head, and I don't know, that sounds pretty unorthodox to me, and definitely in the line of what a mad scientist must do. Of course, he was stopped, but he did state that it would have worked if he was able to continue. So those are just a few of the reasons why Egon Spengler deserves to be in the Mad Genius Hall of Fame. I hope you agree with me. But I want to know what you guys think. What are some people, some characters that you would like to see inducted into the Mad Genius Hall of Fame? And let me know. Just leave your comments in the comment section. Let me know who you think would make a good addition to this little collection of great minds, or mad minds, or however you want to say it. So anyway, that's gonna pretty much do it. As you can see, I'm just wrapping up the drawing, popping it out, like I said, with the little white gel pen. And again, all those tools will be in there. You can check those out. But let me know what you guys think of this series. Leave your comments and everything, and I will I'll see you in a bit. That's going to wrap up the drawing, and we're going to go back to the lab. Now, you've seen this piece come together, but in order to make it official, we have to do the unveiling. So today we are inducting Egon Spengler into the Mad Genius Hall of Fame. I'll see you guys later. That is all. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me here in the Art Lab. There's a lot of other great content on the channel, so click that subscribe button and you won't miss a thing. If you're an aspiring evil genius, visit Serkworks.com for all your mad science supply needs. And if you want to contact me, hit me up in the comments section or follow me on social media. I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you then.